Overnight, the Earth plunged into an extreme cold of minus 40 degrees Celsius. The global population was decimated. Everywhere I looked, corpses were frozen to the icy ground. Beside me were my relatives who had long since passed away. Their bodies had become ice sculptures. As far as the eye could see, there was not a single living soul left. Almost our entire family perished in this catastrophe. After the terrifying cold and famine descended, I stocked up on a massive amount of supplies and hid at home with my parents. Amidst the freezing, snow-covered world outside, our family of 3 gathered around a table, eating hot pot. This is the 3rd time I've had this dream. In the dream, everything was a blinding white. Heavy snow like goose feathers was swirling wildly in the freezing wind. The extreme cold seemed to freeze the air itself. Inhaling the freezing air into my nasal cavity caused my entire respiratory tract to tighten. I felt like I was suffocating. Everywhere I looked, corpses were frozen to the icy ground. Beside me were my relatives who had long since passed away. Their bodies had become ice sculptures. As far as the eye could see, there was not a single living soul left. Only the sound of the howling wind remained between heaven and earth. I curled up in a corner. First came a piercing, agonizing pain in my limbs. Then they slowly grew numb. I lost all sensation. Not long after, my consciousness slowly faded away. A bright white light seemed to appear before my eyes. I woke up with a start, sitting up in bed, drenched in cold sweat. The faint sound of insects chirping outside the window drifted in. The AC in the room wasn't on, and it was as hot as a steamer. My back was completely soaked with sweat. I wiped the sweat from my forehead, moved my stiff arms, and couldn't help but shiver. This dream again. This is the 3rd time I've had this exact dream. If I could brush off the first dream as just watching too many disaster movies, then having the same, identical dream for the 3rd time, it sent a chill down my spine. It was terrifying. That feeling of freezing to death alive was way too real. My fingertips were still tingling with phantom pain. Even now, I was still covered in cold sweat. I even vividly remembered the exact day the extreme cold descended. The early hours of December 21st. Snow suddenly began to fall from the midsummer sky. And then the deadly ice that consumed countless lives arrived. I glanced at my phone. It was December 19th. There were only 2 days left until the early hours of the 21st. A lightning-fast thought flashed across my mind, making me shudder. Could this be a premonition? How else could I explain having the exact same dream for 3 consecutive nights? My sleepiness completely vanished. I sat on the bed thinking for a while, then picked up my phone and checked the balances on my bank cards one by one. I didn't believe such supernatural things existed. But these 3 dreams must be a warning for something. I needed to take action. Adding up all the money I had across my cards right now, I only had about 300,000 left. But my hand holding the phone paused for a second. I froze. It's just a dream after all. Is there really a need to make such a huge fuss? This is my entire life savings. If I waste it all and the disaster never comes, then my last 2 years of hard work will be for nothing. Just then, my phone suddenly buzzed. I opened it and saw. It was a text message. Meteorological Observatory, December 18, 2024, to 13 p.m. Red alert. It is expected that Shenyang, Fenyang, and other areas will reach a maximum temperature of 45 degrees Celsius. Please take precautions against the heat. That was it. I received this exact same text message in the dream. After 3 consecutive days of extreme heat, heavy snow would fall, and the apocalyptic cold would arrive abruptly. I couldn't hesitate any longer. I had to make a plan right now. I immediately called my parents overseas. They were still on a vacation tour. I told them to leave the tour group immediately, buy the earliest tickets, and fly back home. My parents sounded quite surprised on the phone. Are you crazy? My dad asked. We spent tens of thousands on this tour, and we've barely been here for 2 days. Did something happen at home? I wiped my face, sounding exhausted. Just listen to me. Would I ever harm you? You have to catch the earliest flight. By tomorrow at the latest, you must be back in the country. Although my parents still had their doubts, they couldn't argue with me and had no choice but to agree. After returning home, I quickly hired workers to urgently install thermal insulation paint and foam layers in my apartment. Because time was so tight, there was no time for proper renovations. It looked rough and ugly. But I couldn't afford to care about aesthetics right now. While the construction was going on, the neighbor from upstairs came down several times to complain. A skinny woman pounded on my door loudly. When I opened it, she glared at me, speaking with pure venom. Your renovation is making a huge racket. Are you going to let people sleep or not? My husband works the night shift. What are you going to do if he can't get his rest? I apologized politely. I'm very sorry. I've tried my best to limit the work to normal working hours. After M. and before PM. Please, I ask for your understanding. The woman rolled her eyes. Behind her, a tall, burly man with a flushed face and a fierce expression stepped forward. He raised his fist to threaten me. Can't you understand human words? I need to sleep during the day. With all your banging and crashing, I can't sleep at all. I held my patience and asked, then what do you suggest? I can't possibly do construction at night, right? How about this? I'll only have them work in the afternoon and stop in the morning. Is that okay? The afternoon doesn't work either. The woman's eyebrows shot up. If you make him too tired for work, you have to compensate us for his lost wages. I felt helpless. These upstairs neighbors were completely unreasonable. They had previously stolen another neighbor's parking spot and refused to give it back, forcing that poor neighbor to go find another space. They also constantly threw their trash all over the hallway, making the cleaners complain every single day. Their horrible reputation was well known throughout the residential compound. However, right now, I didn't have the time to argue with them. I just grabbed 1,000 yuan and handed it over. The renovation will only take 2 days. Consider this lost wage compensation. Just take it as my apology. Then I immediately shut the door. I heard the woman's smug laughter outside, followed by her yelling through the door. Just one day. If it takes longer, you have to pay more. I ignored her and went back to organizing my things. She might be lucky enough to extort my money today, but I doubted she'd live long enough to spend it. While the construction continued, I took the time to sweep through every supermarket I could find nearby. I bought everything in sight. First, I bought all kinds of rice, noodles, cooking oil, fruits and vegetables, plus all the essential daily condiments. I packed several huge bags full and made multiple trips to transport them home. In addition to that, I also bought various medicines, alcohol fuel, lighters, a diesel generator, diesel fuel, heat packs and other survival necessities, and a massive amount of drinking water. Once the temperature dropped that low, cell phones would be useless. So I only bought a few power banks as a backup. After getting everything done, I finally picked up my phone, planning to call my parents. Checking the time. They should have arrived by now. But the moment I looked at the screen, I froze. My mom had sent a message, bad news. There's a typhoon here, and our flight is delayed. Don't worry. We should be able to leave in a bit. My brain buzzed with panic. When I tried to call them, they weren't picking up. I quickly checked the flight information. They had booked the earliest available flight, but it was delayed until the morning of the 20th. I had originally called my parents in the early hours of the 19th. If they could have flown back smoothly, they would be arriving right about now. But if their flight didn't leave until the morning of the 20th, they wouldn't arrive until the early hours of the 21st. Right when the extreme disaster was set to strike, my whole body turned ice cold. I desperately kept dialing their number over and over, but I had no idea what they were doing. They simply weren't answering the phone. It wasn't until the early hours of the 20th that my mom finally texted me back. We're boarding the plane now. Don't worry, your dad lost his phone. And my battery is almost dead. I can't talk right now. Just wait for us at the airport. I wanted to cry, but no tears came. The good news was, in my memory, the disaster wouldn't strike until midnight, so their flight landing wouldn't be affected. The bad news was, by the time they got off the plane, they probably wouldn't even have picked their luggage. Before the apocalyptic freeze arrived, even if the temperature didn't drop to the absolute lowest point on the first day, it would still hit around minus 20 degrees. They were coming back from Thailand, so they probably didn't even have a single coat. They wouldn't last a minute outside. I had to go to the airport and wait for them well in advance. The second I picked them up, we had to rush straight home, otherwise, I remembered the gruesome tragedy from my dream and shivered uncontrollably. On the final day, I bought a huge amount of meat and stuffed my storage room full. I set the AC to the lowest possible temperature. It should keep the meat from spoiling for a short while. After all the supplies were stored away, I used the very last of my money to buy coal and firewood. I piled it all up in the study. After the extreme cold strikes, human society would completely lose all order. Water and electricity would be completely cut off very soon. Heating would only be possible using the most primitive methods. Survival. I didn't know how long the supplies I prepared would last, but I had done my absolute best. Everything was ready. I drove to the airport. to wait for their flight to land. Night fell quickly. Carrying 2 massive down jackets, I stood in the terminal, eyes wide open, without a hint of sleepiness, even though it was late at night. The airport was still bustling with people. It was very lively. The lights were brightly lit everywhere. Time ticked forward, second by second. With every tick, I felt an indescribable, agonizing tension. I was terrified of the extreme cold arriving, but also terrified that it wouldn't. I stared intensely at the clock as every minute and second passed. PM, 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 finally. At 11:40 p.m., the flight announcement finally played. A sweet female voice echoed. Flight Feng Air 2164 has arrived at Qingxi International Airport. I had already sent countless text messages, begging my parents to rush out immediately after getting off the plane and not to wait for their luggage. But I had no idea if they would even see the texts. I could see pedestrians outside the window, every single one of them sweating profusely. A young girl's makeup was completely ruined by sweat, and she was standing by the street using a compact to touch it up. It was indeed incredibly hot today. The peak temperature had hit 46 degrees. The feels-like temperature was absurdly high. It was the hottest day of the summer so far. Yet experts on TV claimed that this summer would be the coolest summer we'd see in the next 100 years. In other words, they were predicting every single year would be hotter than the last. Only I knew the truth. That was completely impossible. The dream hadn't shown me exactly how long the deep freeze would last, because I froze to death just a few days after it began. That absolute sub-zero temperature reminded me of the great ice ages in Earth's history. It was said that in some places, the average temperature could plummet to -50 degrees. The entire globe would be frozen solid. I had no idea how long this catastrophe would endure. But I knew for a fact it wasn't going to end anytime soon. I needed to be prepared to fight the cold for a long, long time. Thank God. For once, my parents actually listened to me. They abandoned their luggage and came rushing out. My parents waved at me from afar. Following behind them was Auntie Zhang, who had gone on the Thailand trip with them. I heard my mom mention earlier that she wasn't used to the climate there and felt sick, so she decided to fly back with them. I anxiously waved them over, constantly checking the time on my phone. 11:57 p.m. Very soon, this place would turn into an icy hell. My mom anxiously slapped my arm, complaining, "Why are you in such a frantic rush? What exactly happened?" I had zero time to dawdle with her. I grabbed her arm to drag her away, but from the corner of my eye, I saw Auntie Zhang standing off to the side. She was an old friend of my mom's. She loved to show off, and I didn't like her much. But right now, compassion got the better of me. I asked her, "Auntie Zhang, why don't you come with us?" Auntie Zhang gave me a dismissive look, smiled and said, "Oh, no need. You guys go ahead. I'm just waiting for my son-in-law to come pick me up." I knew her daughter had married a rich guy who drove a Maybach. She absolutely loved having her son-in-law pick her up in that car. Because it made her feel important. Well, good words can't persuade a doomed ghost. I never really liked Auntie Zhang anyway, given how her daughter always subtly tried to compete with me. So I just nodded, grabbed my parents and sprinted toward the exit. I caught a glimpse of the giant clock in the terminal out of the corner of my eye. 11:59 p.m. Everyone around us was complaining about the heat. Even though it was midnight, the temperature seemed to be rising. The entire airport was unbearably muggy, as if the air had stopped circulating entirely. My dad was sweating bullets, panting as we ran. Let's rest a bit. It's way too hot. Why is it even hotter here than in Thailand? My mom wiped her sweat and complained too. It's literally like an oven. I feel like I'm being cooked alive. The time is now 12 o'clock midnight. The terminal began broadcasting the time. The moment the electronic chime rang, my heart violently skipped a beat. I snapped my head to look out the window. Outside, a sudden, howling, freezing wind whipped around. Snowflakes abruptly began falling from the pitch-black sky. At first, just a few flakes, instantly melting in the sweltering heat. But then, an overwhelming blizzard filled the sky, plunging downward. Someone next to us gasped in shock. Holy crap, it's snowing! Snowing in midsummer? Is it some sort of bad omen? People around us crowded toward the windows to watch the spectacle. The terminal grew noisy, as everyone loudly discussed this bizarre weather anomaly. No one had realized that death was upon them. Massive goose feather like snow roared down from the heavens, like a divine punishment. And humanity, the target of this punishment, remained completely oblivious. It felt like in a mere split second, the temperature nosedived. My mom looked confused. Why does it suddenly feel a little cold? Are you guys cold too? I pressed my lips tightly together, pulled the heavy down jackets from the bags, and handed them over. With a heavy voice, I said, "Let's go. If we don't leave now, we never will." The moment we stepped out the airport doors, a brutal blast of Arctic air slammed into us, making me shudder violently. The snowflakes were massive, whipped up by the howling wind, spiraling wildly in the air. A thin layer of snow rapidly accumulated on the ground. Even at midnight, the area outside the airport was very busy. The curbs were lined with pedestrians and taxis waiting for passengers. We got in the car and started driving. My dad asked, "What is going on? Why did it suddenly start snowing?" I glanced at the temperature display. -5 degrees. In just 5 short minutes. The temperature had plummeted by over 40 degrees. And this was only the beginning. Seeing the terrified looks on my parents' faces, I gave them a brief rundown of what had happened over the past few days, including the 3 bizarre dreams, and all the supplies I'd hoarded. After they finished listening, a long silence filled the car. The only sound was them gulping nervously. I thought we would have a smooth ride home. But in the distance, I saw a massive traffic jam. All the cars were blocked up together. The line stretched out so far that you couldn't see the end of it. Damn it. I never expected there'd be an accident right off the highway exit. Now we were boxed in from the front and the back. We were completely stuck. Piercing noises erupted around us, as furious drivers slammed on their horns. But no one dared to open their car doors and step outside. The disaster struck so suddenly. Almost everyone was wearing only thin summer clothes. Stepping out now meant certain death. Only by staying in the car with the heater on. Was there any chance of survival? On the very first day of the sudden freeze, so many people had already perished. It was the first time I faced this cruel reality head-on. The city's vibrant nightlife had forcefully been put on pause. The streets that were just full of people eating barbecue and drinking beer were now completely empty. Everywhere you looked, there was nothing but dead silence. The night deepened. The sound of blaring horns had lessened significantly. But as every second ticked by, the situation outside grew more chaotic. Countless drivers whose engines had died stepped out to beg for help. Some were lucky enough to find kind souls to take them in, while the rest wandered like headless FLIs, helplessly knocking on every single car window. After what felt like an eternity, a voice blasted from a loudspeaker, from the emergency workers up ahead. Temperatures are plummeting. Please ensure you stay warm. Maintain order. And proceed slowly. I opened my eyes and saw the convoy ahead finally starting to move at a snail's pace. I quickly refocused, stepping on the gas to follow. I glanced in the rearview mirror, and a terrifying chill crept up my spine inch by inch. It felt like I had been plunged into an ice cave. Amidst the traffic behind us, several people were lying rigidly on the ground. The parts of their limbs not covered by the snow were bruised and pale, almost matching the color of the ice around them. Their cars had died, and they hadn't found anyone willing to take them in. Now, they had frozen to death alive right there in the snow. I did a rough count. Just the bodies visible in the snow numbered at least 7 or 8. There were probably more further away that I couldn't see. And what about the people who froze to death inside their cars? How many of them were there? My heart sank. On the very first day of the sudden freeze, so many people had already died. It was the first time I faced this cruel reality head-on. The city's vibrant nightlife had abruptly been put on pause. The streets that were just full of people eating barbecue and drinking beer were now completely empty. Everywhere you looked, there was nothing but dead silence. Our home wasn't too far from the airport. After driving for half an hour, we finally made it to our residential compound. The supermarket in our neighborhood was packed with people fighting for supplies. My mom, worrying that the supplies I had stockpiled might not last long enough, decided to buy more right there. It's so cold anyway, the food won't go bad. After finally squeezing her way out of the chaotic crowd, my mom proudly pointed to the groceries in her hands. If my hands weren't so fast, another woman would have snatched all of this. The freezing wind grew fiercer. The snowflakes were now half the size of a thumb. The icy air cut at our faces like knives. Fighting against the wind, the three of us finally made it into our building's hallway. The hallway was freezing cold, without a trace of warmth. But at least we were out of the wind. Our apartment was as cold as an icebox. The meat I had bought was sitting out in the storage room. Fortunately, the power hadn't been cut off yet. I hurriedly turned on all the AC units, and it took a long time of blasting heat before we finally warmed up. I had sealed up every single gap in the doors and windows. leaving only 2 windows in the living room for ventilation. Every wall was fitted with thick thermal insulation layers, and the electric heaters were running at full blast. After a while, color finally returned to my mom's face. She took off her heavy down jacket and turned on the TV. An emergency broadcast was playing, reminding residents to prepare for the unprecedented temperature drop and to stay warm at all costs. But the warning had come far too late. It had only been half a day, and the world was already in absolute chaos. I checked my phone. The hashtag warning, temperature drop, was trending everywhere. Everyone on the internet was frantically discussing the phenomenon. The temperature here just tanked suddenly. It's minus 20 degrees inside my house. What is happening? Same here in Beijing. It was boiling hot right before I went to sleep. And there was even a high temperature alert. But I literally woke up freezing in the middle of the night. My windows are iced over. Holy crap. The snow is already up to my ankles. Am I still dreaming? It was obvious that most people hadn't realized the true severity of the situation yet. They were still treating it like a joke, discussing it as if it were a novelty. A night passed. The entire world was now thoroughly encased in ice. As far as the eye could see, everything was a sheet of blinding white. At first, the property management braved the cold to shovel the snow. But it was simply too brutal. Even the property staff retreated indoors. Crowds of people huddled at the entrance of the supermarket, waiting for it to open. They shivered uncontrollably, but refused to go home. After just one night, everyone now understood that an apocalyptic cold wave had engulfed the whole world. This was absolutely not some temporary weather anomaly. My dad softly comforted my mom. Don't be scared, we have plenty of supplies. We'll be completely fine. My mom nodded. In the apocalypse, it's even more important to live as well as possible. We didn't know what tomorrow would bring. Perhaps a hot, comforting pot of meat would give us the courage to face the unknown disasters ahead. The worry on my mom's face melted away in the steam of the hot pot. It disappeared instantly. She busily scooped meat out of the boiling broth to eat. The power hadn't gone out yet, but it was far too cold outside. The AC was barely making a dent in the cold. If I remembered correctly, in a few days, power and water would be completely cut off. And the internet would go down too. I needed to check what was happening in the outside world while I still could. The news had already updated the global death toll caused by this unprecedented drop in temperature. The US, 48,713 deaths. Russia, 54,186 deaths. The UK, 13,652 deaths. Even in places like Singapore, 3,560 people had frozen to death in the sudden cold wave. Most of these casualties were the homeless who had nowhere to go. In the face of this sudden apocalyptic disaster, they had absolutely no means to defend themselves. And this was merely the beginning. The death toll was going to skyrocket exponentially. Humanity, in the face of Mother Nature's wrath, was as fragile as ants. On the third day of the extreme cold, our power went out. It was minus 64 degrees outside. Our home had turned into an icebox. My dad said grimly, "This won't work. Didn't you set up a fire stove?" Tonight, we'll sleep around the fire. In the darkness, the orange glow of the fire chased away the bitter chill. My frozen hands and feet slowly regained feeling after a bout of sharp, stinging pain. The wood crackled as it burned. Though it wasn't as good as the AC, it made things significantly warmer. Watching the dancing flames and listening to the faint popping sounds of the burning wood, a wave of drowsiness slowly washed over my brain. Once the power went out, things spiraled entirely out of control. Neighbors who still had phone batteries spammed the community group chat. Does anyone have extra clothes? My child is freezing to death. Please someone, save us. We're out of water too. The pipes have all burst from the ice. Can the property management do something about this? If this goes on, even if we don't freeze to death, we'll die of thirst. Right at that moment, violent banging came from our front door. My dad made a shush gesture at me. He grabbed a kitchen knife and tiptoed quietly toward the door. The pounding grew louder and louder. The heavy thuds felt like they were striking right against my heart. A man's aggressive shouting echoed through the enclosed hallway. Open up! Open the damn door! Do you have any food? Hand it over and share it with us. I know there's someone in there. You were just doing renovations a few days ago. If you don't open up, I'll smash this door down. My heart was in my throat, my grip tightening around my own kitchen knife. Thankfully, the worst-case scenario didn't happen. Our reinforced door was incredibly sturdy. After ramming it several times and realizing it wouldn't budge, the man cursed and moved on to the next apartment. It seemed our upstairs neighbors had completely run out of food. Otherwise, he wouldn't be desperate enough to rob people. In the days that followed, we stayed hunkered down in our apartment. We also became much more careful. Before cooking anything that smelled strongly, we double-sealed the doors and windows. An innocent man can be killed simply for possessing a treasure. Humanity could absolutely not be trusted right now. Order had completely collapsed. Every day, we could hear screams echoing from downstairs. Among the bodies buried in the snow out there, many hadn't just frozen, they had been murdered, but it was so cold that the blood froze immediately as it spilled, turning into bloody ice. After banging on our door for 3 days, the man from upstairs never appeared again. A month later, our firewood and coal reserves were almost gone. Even though we had been rationing them strictly, we were nearly out. When sleeping at night, my mom shivered relentlessly. We all knew that if we didn't find more fuel, we were all going to die. The next day, the building manager came knocking. Mr. Wang and fellow residents, most of us have nothing left to burn for warmth. We're organizing a group to go out and chop some wood. Do you want to join us? We meet at the compound gates at AM. We'll aim to be back before the sun goes down. After saying that, he moved on to knock on the next door. When he knocked on the door upstairs, we heard the skinny woman's piercing shriek echo in the stairwell. Are you crazy? Do you know how much we pay in property fees every year? It's your job to chop the wood and bring it to us. And we're out of food. Go bring us some right now. Did you hear me? If you don't, I'll file a formal complaint. The manager let out a bitter laugh. After arguing with her for a moment, he realized it was pointless. He ignored her and continued heading upstairs. When we got downstairs, a fair number of people had already gathered. Most of them were able-bodied young adults. As for the corpses littering the ground, everyone was numb to the sight of them by now. They just tried to keep their distance. I knew that dead bodies like these were now covering the entire world. The manager spoke up. Everyone, we must work together if we want to survive. We'll chop some wood and bring it back for heating. We set off now. Remember, we must return before the sun sets. The blizzard was only getting heavier. Even at noon, the sky was a dim, hazy gray. The air was completely filled with swirling snow. I felt like I had never endured anything this agonizing in my life. I moved like a mindless machine, pushing forward on sheer willpower alone. Just when I was about to collapse from the cold, the manager at the front of the group spoke up. With a hint of excitement in his voice, he yelled, "We're here, let's chop as much as we can carry, so we won't have to come out again soon." Instantly, people swarmed into the small patch of woods, brandishing whatever blades or axes they had. They began hacking at the trees like madmen. After getting back home, we placed the freshly chopped wood by the charcoal stove to dry it out, so we could burn it at night. That trip outside had frozen us all to the bone. Especially my mom, who couldn't stop shaking violently. We baked our hands by the fire for a long time before they barely regained feeling. The horizon gradually turned inky black. Darkness enveloped the sky. There was nothing but pitch blackness outside our windows. Other than the eerie, shrieking wail of the winter wind, all that remained was a deadly silence. We rationed our firewood as strictly as possible, but it barely lasted 2 weeks. 2 weeks later, the building manager was gone too. The temperature had plummeted to -80 degrees. Our family of 3 had stopped all physical activity. Every day, we wrapped ourselves in multiple layers of blankets, lying in bed, trembling violently. We had food, but no fire to cook it with. It seemed like everyone else in the building had already perished. Between heaven and earth, it felt like only our family of 3 was left clinging to life. And very soon, our time was going to be up too. My mom crawled into my blanket, hugging me tightly. She softly sang the lullaby she used to sing me to sleep when I was a child. But as she sang, she broke down sobbing. Even after having a premonition, could I still not escape this fate? The stinging pain in my body slowly faded away. I felt my limbs gradually losing all sensation. And then, a bizarre, comforting warmth surged over me. I knew this was the terminal hallucination of severe hypothermia. But the warmth grew more and more undeniable. I forced my eyes open and reached out to feel the air from the AC unit nearby. It wasn't a hallucination. The AC was actually blowing hot air. When I touched it, it was genuinely warm, just as I was trying to process this. The TV in the living room suddenly crackled with static. The power had suddenly been restored. The TV was broadcasting an emergency rescue announcement. Currently, the Central Disaster Command has mobilized all rescue forces. Rescue teams are rushing out in every direction. Power has been restored to select areas. Believe in the tenacity of humanity. Pray for a miracle of life. Please hold on. We will never give up on you. Somewhere in our compound, a weak voice called out the window, "Is anyone still alive?" A few moments later, just as we thought no one would reply, another voice spoke up. "Are you guys okay?" Someone cried, "Everyone upstairs and downstairs from me is dead. I'm the only one left. I'm still alive too. Does anyone have food? We're starving to death over here." All these fragile voices gathered together in the night, igniting the hope of survival. Tears streaming down my face, I shouted out into the dark night, "We're here too. We're going to survive this."